in-person calls, or like you right now doing for another, NASCAR after race, but from the track side on the Zoom call. And whether you are at the track, or if you were at the track, or you're watching at home, you have the same media access as you do. It doesn't matter. Like I said, you're talking to them. It's not face to face. NFL games will be the same way. There will not be locker room access. But yeah, sure, that changes a little bit. It changes how you build relationships. It changes how you go about, breaking off one-on-one with the guys instead of being with the media scrum, so that you can get some unique quotes and ask some questions that other people aren't going to. To find other ways to go about it. If you want that guy one-on-one, the NFL player, you're calling his agent, and you're calling him directly and setting up a call that way. Been fortunate enough with my team in Charlotte to talk to handful of Panthers players, one-on-one this offseason that we didn't have to rely on the Panthers for their scheduled media access. Same with NASCAR. You go about it. You have to go about it, I guess, a little differently in terms of what your medium is on how you're talking to someone, or who your contact point is, but it's all recording. And I think I feel too many people get worked up in there's no games, what are sports? Games are, I guess, your goal in sports, and that's what you train for, are the games, but they take up the small time of sports. They're really the league. The results are what? Binary, right? You can win or you can lose. I guess sometimes soccer you can have a draw. But you have two outcomes. There's different ways that you get to those outcomes, but there's two different outcomes. So everything else around sports, I think, that's what makes sports interesting, and has been, frankly, more interesting during the pandemic. It's the news of sports, it's the characters around sports that really make sports what they are.
Man, I'm gonna just for an administrative point, make sure that any apps that you might have up, quit those if they don't relate to the Zoom, so that we make sure we get your dulcet tones coming through without interruption. And with that being said, let me let everybody know that the quote that we have that starts off the week, the mindset moment, fits exactly with what Matt just said. And it goes like this, and you'll be surprised as to the author of this quote is: if you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude. So says Maya Angelou. And for me, that particular author is such a sublime and sophisticated set of softness, but in that particular quote, she basically says, we got stuff going on around here. If you don't like it, make a change, fix it. And if by fixing it still doesn't work, then you've got to change your attitude and adjust and adapt. So Matt, with that being said, there was a lot of great things that happened during, the last couple of days. Major League Baseball, the Yankees played, the Dodgers played. We've got continuation, as you mentioned, NASCAR is continuing, golf is still going on. So when you're looking at these events, what are some of the components about being a sports journalist that are not part of your day-to-day preparation? Make sure I got your, there you go.
I put mute to make sure there's no echo, and then I talked and there was no sorry. Hold that through a little more. I have trouble following you there.
Yeah, there. You cover lots of teams. You're in a great metropolitan area for coverage, and you've got the entire East Coast. You've got the entire East Coast as part of your window. So is your travel reduced? Are you using virtual communication as your primary source? What's changed that was typically there but no longer there and part of your routine?
Okay, I see. Yeah, travel has been reduced. Part of that's company restrictions early on. Some of it is what's
like covering, well, as the most events right now is for a while they're only allowing 4 reporters in the press box, and of course no infield access. And usually that place is full, the infield is full, the media center in the infield is full. So Alex, our NASCAR reporter, we race down in Darlington, South Carolina that we usually send her to. We couldn't because they allowed one local spot, or for one spot for local media, and that went to someone at the Florence, South Carolina paid for one race, and then Darlington, or then the Columbia, South Carolina race or paid for another day. But we had a person in Charlotte and other people, other media outlets who usually would cover the Coca-Cola 600. They didn't get to come. So that's been we've had to cut back our travel budget. We have all unspent money. On the other, I kind of wish we could go to more events that there isn't as much media access. So we certainly trim back on that. Also, testing. All our reporters have had to do COVID-19 testing. NFL training camp is going to start. Well, it has technically started with rookies reporting, and then rookies take their second set of COVID-19 tests today, needing two negative tests. But our reporters who are going to be on site in what they call the Tier 2M access, that are up close to the field, they have to do daily testing. When we do go to a NASCAR race, whether it's Alex or our columnist Scott Fowler, they get screened going in beforehand, just like so there are a lot more hurdles to jump through, I guess. And I say hurdle, that probably sounds negative, but safety precautions. Yeah. Everyone is trying to stay safe. A lot of our sports reporters have been out covering news during the pandemic, and a lot of protest coverage. So for social justice protests, and we asked everyone to, hey, be sure you are continuing to get tested when you're out there, just because we want you healthy and we don't want you spreading anything if you were to contract COVID-19. And I think those have been the biggest changes. It's less travel, and a lot more testing that we've had to do. I was at the ACC tournament in Greensboro, March 11th and 12th, when the whole world shut down. Basketball. And my NASCAR writer had driven down to Atlanta to cover that NASCAR race, and everything just shut down. And we kind of just drove back and wrote the stories that were the other stories around that. The way we wrote a great story on how recapping the surreal ACC tournament, where 2 days before they shut the tournament down, it was a halftime show where babies were crawling across the sweaty floor. There's a baby race, and it's just like where there's all this sweat, and and there was, Florida State and Clemson were warming up for their quarterfinal game, and all of a sudden they got called off the floor, and there were a bunch of people who went down to Atlanta for that NASCAR race, because NASCAR fans are like Grateful Dead fans. They're so dedicated. And they said, we can't get into the race, but we're still camping out. Under the trailer, we just weren't going to go anywhere. So we're still able to find unique stories. We have to go about finding them, a different way than normal. But, like I said, less travel overall. We're grateful we were able to send 2 people up to Bristol, Tennessee for the NASCAR All-Star race. One, we covered, our reporter covered it in a traditional sense from the press box. And our columnist sat in the stands where there were 30,000 people, or they allowed up to 30,000 people. I think only about 20,000 people showed up, which sounds like a lot, but that place seats well over 100,000, that Coliseum. Sat in the stands and covered it from that standpoint. But we just had to really adapt how we're covering it.
So Matt, let me give my audience a little background on Matt. Matt comes to you from Charlotte, North Carolina, via the Charlotte Observer, where he's the sports editor there, but he was in Denver at one time, prior to that with the Denver Post, and then prior to that He was with the Coloradan up in Fort Collins, that's where our paths first crossed when I was working with the athletic department up there in the very interesting and always changing tide of Jim McElwain and the staff that's up there. And in saying that, I'm preparing our audience, Matt, to understand that, it's one thing to adapt and adjust, but as a company, the Observer, like many news outlets around the globe, are used to that traffic in and out. Touching base with editors and having those meetings of staff, like with your staff. Now those meetings have to be at a distance. I'm imagining you're not going into the office. You're doing it either like we're doing today or some other way, or you might clandestinely meet and cross paths at Thunder Alley in Bristol, Tennessee, to cover a race. What are some other things that are impacting the workforce in the journalistic community? Because I know you're recently a new homeowner. You've got young kids at home. I mean, the athletes have been concerned about participating because they have young kids at home. Have you had similar concerns as a journalist?
One thing I always do before I send a reporter out to cover something out in the public, or whether it's doing a news assignment to cover a protest, or as sporting events start to pick up, especially on the local level. Like there's right across the state line in Rock Hill, South Carolina, there's a basketball showcase for recruits. And because there they can gather. It's usually in Charlotte. They moved it right across the state line. I think I always ask reporters, where's the government? If not, that's fine. You don't have to go. And we can either find someone else or we'll find a different way to cover it. But I want to make sure everyone's feeling like they're safe, feeling like they're going to be healthy. If they were showing symptoms, let me know. Let's pull you off whatever you're doing once you rest. So we've been really conscientious about that. We also, we all of our meetings are just like this. We're really good at Zoom, really good at Google meetings. It's been an adjustment, especially on the news side. For sports, all my reporters have desks in the office, but sports reporters are rarely in the office. It's usually I'm the only sports guy in the office as editor. I remember going out to and Rhino Howell in different posts, he has his own desk at the Broncos Media Center. Just like all the reporters. Like Panthers is a little different setup, but you're always there. So you have same with Hornets. You're always at the Spectrum Center. Everyone has their own desk, but I don't see a lot of reporters in the office unless we're meeting, which we do on a regular basis. But this is an adjustment getting to, if I'm sitting down with someone to edit a story, I can no longer do that in person. And we have an intern this summer, and I have, on one hand, feel really bad that her sports internship at the Charlotte Observer, she will be the editor-in-chief of the Red and Black, which is a great student paper at the University of Georgia, this fall. Her internship has been different than we planned, obviously, but it's been tough for me because I was editing her post, or my first summer, just started last July at the Charlotte Observer. Our intern Madeline Coleman, I was able to sit down with her and write and explain things to her as we edit a story side by side. We are using a lot of Google Docs for my intern story this year, where notes, we can both be in there at the same time, we can get on the phone together, and I can make edits in real time, and she can see them and make notes back to each other, and just, that's been an adjustment, because, I'd rather sit down with the young reporter and say, hey, this is why I don't think this works, this is why I think this needs to be moved here, I think this works well, but maybe pull on this a little harder. That's what we're trying to be in constant communication most we can. Too, my team is set up as a regional team. So I have 3 fellow editors on my team. 2 big in South Carolina, as our McClatchy Southeast Regional Sports structure. So with editors, we're used to communicating, remotely like this. But it's a little different with the reporters who, are, direct reports. On being able to coach them, teach them, work with them, but there's a lot of phone calls. I mean, my Mondays don't usually start. I don't get anything I say productive writing, editing done until 1 p.m. because I'm making calls all morning, one-on-ones with everyone to try to plan out the rest of the week, check in on everyone. So there's been a lot more of that, and that's been an adjustment. We're at a work from home state for quite a while now. I mean, we've been doing it for since March 12th, I guess you'd say. And on top of that, with McClatchy as the company just wrapping up bankruptcy Chapter 11 is being able to get out of certain leases. So 7 McClatchy papers, Charlotte Observer and Miami Herald being the 2 biggest, are moving out of their newsrooms into looking for smaller offices for financial reasons. And so, be working at home, even if the pandemic ended tomorrow, we'd be working from home through at least December. So it's been an adjustment, but, my wife does a really good job of trying to keep my 3-year-old daughter out of the office when she can. Lock it, I can lock the door, but she might just bang on it and knock, I want to come in. And then, I'm very grateful to have this job that I can work from home. And I know a lot of people are not that fortunate. I'm lucky that, my wife doesn't have to work right now. She works hard keeping the kids at bay every day, but she doesn't have to have a full-time job right now. We're able to somehow they do it. It's tough. I know some reporters that talk to, married with kids or editors, that they and their spouse both work and they take shifts during the day. But I'm working right now, okay, kids right now, and that's a challenge. But we find a way, and I'm grateful to have a job.
Well, maybe I'll put a plug in for maybe some allocation of funds to you for your office expansion from the Observer, since they're looking for spaces to reduce the size and still increase the quality of the work that you do. I don't know if that's going to fly, but at least I'll put it out there for them to think about. One of the things, Matt, that's interesting is when I talk to athletes about facing challenges, I ask them to go back to their fundamentals and work hard on executing the fundamentals. So I'm wondering if with this pandemic and the modifications you're making in that reporting process and the concerns and considerations for safety and health awareness, are you sensing a little bit more focus on those really focused questions, making sure you're being economical with your time, because maybe the signal will flare on the Zoom broadcast and they won't hear your question. Are you finding yourself a little bit more sensitive to the awareness of the fundamentals of journalistic technique?
That's a great question. I hadn't really thought about it that way. And I think maybe we should think about it that way. Because, we've had meetings, had interviews where, not just us, but you're usually on a group call and everyone else has like, wait, can anyone else hear him? No, it's not just me. So yeah, you have to think about that, and that's a great point. That I hadn't really considered. We try to do great journalism regardless of the situation, but as our one thing I've talked to my reporters about, and I want us to be really good at this year is, I have one of my new, I have two campus beat reporters. One of them will be new on the beat this year. We'll have a new person on our UNC and NC State beats in Raleigh, who coaches and players will not be as familiar with. And, our communication will be just like this. There won't be, I can't get you off to the side and really build a rapport with you. Something I'm trying to make sure everyone does is, right now I've not done a good job with it. Hopefully when I get this office finished, I will, but have a background that really stands out and is unique. Because that's going to make you stand out and stick with that person in their head, in their mind. Is, okay, that's the person who has that thing on the wall that really jumped out to me. And really don't just sit in front of a white wall and screen and light it and have a really, really nice background, do that too. But have a background that pops, that it can be memorable to whoever you're interviewing. Because you're going to be in these group interviews like Teddy Bridgewater, do weekly, regular weekly media availability with a group of, 15, 20 people. How are you going to stand out? So say no one, and Teddy doesn't know anyone really in Charlotte. He's new to Charlotte, of course. So whether you've been on the big 10 years or it's your first year, he doesn't know anyone. How are you standing out? You want to stand out doing a good job, asking good questions, but there's that visual cue that makes you stand out. I think really, we really need to think about when we're doing interviews like this.
One of the things I'd add to that for you, Matt, is encourage your staff to make sure that they raise the image, the camera image, to a point where the other party is not looking up your nose.
Yeah.
We tend to put a phone on the table, or we don't have a little flexi tripod that you can plug your phone in. There's some wonderful tools that you can use and carry around in your backpack, so that you're not the person that they're staring at your ceiling. That it's properly positioned. Now I'm going to shift gears on you a little bit. I'm going to use this phrase and see if you've heard this phrase by any of the athletes or teams that you're talked to. The phrase is opt out. Is anybody talking about opting out? I know the NFL has given that the choice. WNBA and the NBA has done that. Now that they're both, the NBA and WNBA start this next week, but in the NFL we've got some waiting time. But also Major League Baseball has described a scenario of opting out. Has that become noteworthy in your world, as in the sports journalistic world, of opting out and covering that?
We have not had any players in our area talk seriously about that. I know Trey Boston is a Panther safety, and he's been really involved with the NFLPA and really involved with, he's a vocal guy. And he, about, upset, and I think some of his points are justified, that the NFL doesn't really seem to have a plan right now. It's starting training camp even without a real clear plan, other than, you're going to be tested, and this 2-week quarantine period, blah, blah, blah. So there have been some folks who've been, vocal about like that. NASCAR, I have not heard anyone opting out. Also, probably part of that is because they, NASCAR resumed after 5 races. They're already I guess NBA is similar, but one thing we have with opt out is we've talked about is, so there are 8 teams who are not in the NBA bubble, the Hornets being among them. And Hornets coach James Borrego has been really vocal about, I need a chance for my guys to practice. I can't go, until December without, March until December when the season's supposed to start, really November with the camp, without practicing. That's going to put us at such a competitive disadvantage, and that you're putting all the teams that are rebuilding really at that disadvantage, because those are the ones that aren't. Those are the young teams that aren't in Orlando, and so wants a chance to practice. And one idea that was floated a few weeks ago was, I think, by Jackie McMullen, was a second bubble, potentially in Chicago, for those 8 teams, that they could have their own exhibition tournament base. Because the NBA has been very clear that you have to meet these certain health and safety protocols. Otherwise, we're not going to let you practice. And that's why, it seems like that, practicing for these games is going to be a non-starter. But the one thing with the second bubble is, if that were to happen, all your free agents to be, your veterans, why would I participate in this? Why would, if I play for the Golden State Warriors, who the Hornets swept this year, because they weren't themselves, but they'll be fine next year. But they would be one of those teams that would be welcomed into that second theoretical bubble. Why would they want to do that? competitor or free agent looking for a new team, why would I risk getting hurt? Why would I risk contracting COVID-19 and hurt my chance of signing a new contract with a better contract with a new team? So that's, in our world, where opting out has really played in our coverage so far. We've talked a little bit about that, but no one here has been really vocal about, saying they don't want to play.
Matt, let's expand that a little bit and take it back to the recruiting of college athletes, because if seasons don't start, seniors won't have playoff tournament showcasing to be able to be seen. And so what does the future look like regarding recruiting, whether it's NBA, NFL, MLB, whatever the sport might be? I believe that recruiting is going to be dramatically impacted by the lack of eyes on performance in those competitive arenas when there's going to be tournaments. So are you seeing any of that happening? I mean, the NBA is one thing with that second bubble mentality, but we're talking college. At the college level, we've already got the Ivy League closing it down. The Big Ten is going to conference only, and other teams might follow suit, or other conferences might follow suit. Mountain West has their meetings next week, which with no indication of what they're going to do. So I'm interested in your point of view from a journalist about what is the recruiting going to look like in about 6 months from now.
For this week, good timing. So Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools, which is the Charlotte public school system, they still have not decided whether they're going to allow high school sports this fall. They pushed back the start of fall practices to September 1. It was supposed to be August 1st. And even if the state, if the North Carolina equivalent of CHASA says, we're going to football, but it's going to start late, there could be school districts that say, you know what, we're not going to do it. And so on Wednesday, there was a protest at CM at the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools district offices of about 100 students. It wasn't a big protest, but 100 student athletes saying, we want to play sports. We understand that this pandemic is serious, but we want to play, we need to play. And whether that's in spring or fall, let us play. Some guys are senior. Intern talked to one athlete, a wide receiver who, everyone thinks that they deserve a chance to play college ball, right? But he said, I don't have any offers yet. I'm a senior. Small school scholarship to play football. He goes, I want to be one of the first people in my family to go to college. I can't afford it on my own. I'm trying to do it on athletics. If I don't play football, how am I going to do that? How am I going to get that chance? He just took a job at Bojangles so he could pay for extra training this summer for football. But he said he doesn't think he can get a much better job other than working at Bojangles, if a higher paying job, get a college degree. Is that probably sensationalized a little bit for mistake? Yeah, but he has a great point. That he wants to go to college. He doesn't necessarily. He's not saying I have to go to Alabama. He wants to go to college. He wants to get a college degree. He wants to football. This is that's a realistic scenario, and that started back in spring when. In baseball, you don't get recruited as a senior generally, as a high school senior. It's your junior year, it's your sophomore, junior, you're building up to these points that you make your mark. And these juniors didn't, I think about that honestly more than the seniors who lost out on their senior years. They were, probably on most teams' radars already if they were seniors. Junior year is such a pivotal point for college athletic recruiting, and they just. The whole, I don't have an answer for what it's going to do, but the whole picture is going to change.
What do you think the NFL scouts are going to be doing? Look at from right now, you could cut back at the NFL or NBA level with your scout crew and say, I don't need as many of you. I can do it virtually. Just have kids send their tapes in. But then the question is content. Do we have enough athletes creating content that we can see? So I'm concerned that this, like for example, you were at the NCAA tournaments in March. You knew about and saw perhaps players disgruntled and fretting about their senior year. They're at the NCAA tournament for the first time ever. You had St. Louis University. It just, they were the first time their men's basketball team got to the NCAA in years. And here's these senior kids who may have had a chance to be looked at by an NBA scout. Or the NFL bowl games that are going to be coming up this next fall and winter. Are we going to even have those to showcase these talented athletes so that scouts and position coaches can even see them? So I'm wondering if the NFL is even thinking beyond today, going into that future. What do you think?
No, I don't think the NFL cares much. NFL. I don't think, the NFL isn't going to adjust. If college football were to move to the spring, and we still have the NFL season this fall, the NFL isn't going to change its NFL draft date, or it's not going to change that window.
Yeah.
Because that would throw everything off the starting NFL game next fall. And that is a lot of money that the NFL would not be willing to lose. So as far as the NFL is concerned, I think the NFL, they don't care. I think you figured out, that's kind of how I think the NFL, I think if the XFL wanted to come back for spring, that could be a great feeder system.
Yeah.
The second time. But I think college football bowl games, first off, if I was concerned, if we get to November and things haven't really settled down, we're still hitting record cases. I hope not, but wear a mask. But like, what?
Yeah.
Why would we play bowl games? What's the point of playing in the Idaho Potato Bowl or the New Mexico Bowl? Well, for what?
A trophy, Matt. A trophy.
Yeah, I guess I'm usually a proponent for these lower level bowl games because I think for a team, I wrote this in a column before, but for a team like Colorado State, those bowl games are in the current structure. That's really the peak. You're not. I guess that's the second highest point you can reach, other than your New Year's Six. You're not going to get it. You're not going to. The structure set up in the college football playoff. It was made to make sure that the Power Five get their 4 playoff spots, and that the one Group of 5 team gets this token big bowl. So I think those games are important for your G5 schools. Some people disagree with me, that's fine. I think those are important for those athletes. But in the grand scheme of things, why would you play those games if you're still concerned about health risks? And I think, but that dominoes into, there's so much money behind those games. ESPN controls most of those bowl games. And there's sponsorship dollars tied to all of them, really. There's so many dominoes that are going to fall, and they're not just going to fall everywhere, and it's going to create a mess. It's going to create a mess.
So let's identify one. Let's identify one of those. Let's identify one of those dominoes, Matt, which is the fan, because ESPN doesn't have the economics unless the fans respond to the model and the product they deliver. So where is the fan in your review of baseball in the short amount of time it's been playing? We've got cardboard cutouts now in the LA Dodgers Stadium that they are looking at economic benefit of selling those cutouts as a revenue stream. So where is the fan in this equation of delivering the sport of the entertainment of sport, in addition to the game of the sport going forward? Because recruiting, the economics of recruiting to fill stadiums because you want to watch your kid or watch a player that you were a fan of. does it all fall apart, or do we continue to support it in some different way?
Well, I mean, TV money, I still think is the biggest part of all of it. It is less so than ticket revenue. Ticket revenue can play a big part, but it's the payouts you get from your TV networks, from your TV deals with Fox and the NFL, or CBS and the NFL, whatever it may be. But I think those are still, I could see, I don't know, I'm throwing an idea out there, but maybe all of a sudden your cable bill starts to get charged a little higher premium for Fox Sports Network than it usually does. ESPN is already far and away the most expensive network you pay for on your cable bill. But I think that could come in, because ticket revenue this year is not going to be there. Well, even if you have 25% capacity, that's, you could joke that, hey, some stadiums, it's just not going to be, so it's all, I mean, that's where money comes in. Or maybe you look at, subscription models are such a big deal right now. Maybe the model starts to adjust, and you start subscribing to your team instead of a network. And I want to watch my team games. A Hulu, so to speak, for a specific team. Like, what if Colorado State started offering, their own? I think they do a commercial of this, but you got.
Well, there's an interesting play, everybody. Matt, are you back with me? There we go.
Hey. Sorry. What if your local school started offering, we're going to play games this year, watch them, you're going to pay $20 this season to watch all of our games and stream on your computer. I could start to see more and more. Now, that's tough because of the already pre-existing agreements with whatever, network your conference is set up with, but not all your games get on TV. Some are set on smaller networks that don't have the same guarantees. So that could be, especially for smaller schools, something that starts to pop up more and more.
Well, back to your history here in Colorado, you've got networks associated with the Nuggets, for example. They have their own streaming network, that could be the source that you're referring to. You've got the SEC at the college level. They control that video that goes out to the Foxes and the ESPNs. They could just bring that in and say, look, instead of you being butts in the stadium, we'll transfer that ticket price to a subscription that you can watch us play in our stadium. Nobody will be there, or maybe it's 25% of the fan base will be there, and the other 75 are going to get the exchange ticket price to a subscription via the internet. You're still seeing it live, but you're not being in harm's way regarding disease and the pandemic. That, from what you just said, that seems to be a very viable path that will negotiate the contract issues that you mentioned, because if ESPN is involved with a bowl game, they're not going to relinquish that to the New Mexico Bowl and let them do it on their own. I think you've got something there, and that gets to my next point with you about environments. You've got an interesting task with you and your staff about the different environments that you're in that may be in different states that are handling participation in an environment in different ways. Like you mentioned the bubble and bringing it to Chicago for the NBA. I'd say no to Chicago for a lot of reasons, not because I don't like Chicago, but because of protests and the Fed going there, as well as the pandemic. Take it to New Mexico. New Mexico's got their numbers are in the crapper as far as COVID. They're doing great. And take the bubble for the NBA there where it's safe and secure. So my question is, you have a lot of balls you have to juggle just by the nature of your staff and the different environments that you're in. Are you taking a more consistent path? I mean, obviously masks, wash your hands, all that kind of stuff. But are they giving you feedback about differences and nuances from state to state as it relates to arenas and stadiums, or am I not finding this a problem at all?
It's more sport to sport than state to state.
Okay.
And that too is because since the pandemic started, we've guest covered events in 2 states or 3. So South Carolina, North Carolina, and Tennessee, which is a little more lax than either NC or SC right now. And really, it's more what the given league is requiring. But the leagues are going to have to abide by what that state allows too. So at this point, it's more, this is what NASCAR's protocols are, and this is what we're following. But I could see a point where we get to, especially, let's say we have, and we got to fly across the country to a state that has stricter laws. And I know a lot of these ideas have been floated before. What is this team going to do if they have to go to, New York doesn't have, I guess, no team is in New York, they're in New Jersey, but if you're to go to New York, let's say an NBA, quarantine rules, are you going to be able to cover a game? Are you going to be able to play a game there? Much less cover it. So these are things that have not been figured out by anyone much smarter than me yet. And so that's kind of how we're taking it one step at a time. But I mean, we were budgeted for Panthers road games, and 4 riders are on the road this year. I added extra money to the Panthers travel budget just so we could do that this year. I don't think I'm going to send 4 riders on the road anymore this year. One hand, I don't know if I feel comfortable. I want us to have the best coverage possible, but let's adapt how maybe that 4th person does something for them. Because, and too, they're going to spread out press boxes and not allow so much either. But that's something we will have to think.
Matt, are the sports and the teams that represent those sports, are the sports or the teams that represent those sports getting better at transferring data to you? Because in your absence, I mean, if you're not going to physically be there, are they taking responsibility for sending you a bit more meatier press releases, meatier background with things, or is it pretty much status quo?
It depends on who the team. Let's say it. I'll just leave it at that. It depends on who you are dealing with.
Very politically stated, Matt. Nicely done.
Much better than others. That's stuff. I mean, one thing, overall, I feel like NASCAR has done a good job. I still think 4 people in a press box, a huge press box, is not very many, I think. But the one thing we had an issue with at the beginning was allowing only a pool photographer, and they were only at first going to allow Getty images, which they also have a financial agreement with. They're their official, like NASCAR pays them to take photos of their games, and they were only going to allow Getty to be the photographer the pool photographer that sent photos out to everyone, including AP. And I got together with Michael Giarrusso, who's head sports at AP, and us in Charlotte. We're the only daily metro newspaper that still covers NASCAR on a regular basis. We got together and said, this won't fly, and here's why. Because you could have editorial oversight over those photos. If there's another Ryan Newman crash like there was at the Daytona 500, and you have editorial control over those photos, you could say, no, we don't want this photo going out to the public. We don't want, and that is not okay. So NASCAR agreed, and we were able to, now there's at least there's one independent pool photographer. Sometimes it's from the local paper. Sometimes it's from the AP, but there's one independent local photographer, or one independent pool photographer. I already started having this discussion with the Panthers earlier this week, where they said if they go inside their practice bubble, they're only going to have a pool photographer. So I said, okay, who will that pool photographer be? So we'll probably just use one of our staff photographers. I said, no, you can't just use one of your staff photographers. You can use one of your staff photographers and an independent photographer. You can't just use a staff photographer. And it doesn't have to be one of ours. I'd love it to be one of ours, but it could be a competitor as long as it's an independent photographer being, because you have editorial oversight over those photos. Because of our ethics guidelines. And two, the AP wire won't even take them. So no one will, across the country, for the most part, no reputable media organization across the country will run any of your photos because the AP won't even accept them on their wire. So those are conversations we've started to have.
Well, with that being said, let me give you another example then. We've got the Washington, and I'll ... what they're called. They have stated football team, Washington football team, but that would be an area where you'd want to dig a little deeper. You know, what are your plans and what are the things going on? You know, they've come out with, we're going to do a gold sticker on the helmet, and we're going to be looking to all different sources for ideas on a new name. But the reporting can get kind of squelched a little bit because of the availability to the people who are decision makers. So are you pushing the buttons with those franchises and saying, hey, give us a little bit more enriched data, give us a little bit more of a lead-in on what's going on so that we can report accurately for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I mean, I feel like our reporters do a good job of every day just being on the phone or trying to be on the phone with you know, team PR people, even if it's not for a store. Even, well, the thing is, don't always just ask for something so you can write something. It's, you know, you can ask questions to get information, but, you know, don't try to make everything you get into a story. If you do a good job of pressing and making requests and getting those requests denied, then coming back a few days later and making the request again and again and again, they'll find those. Okay.
What,
and then, yeah.
This kind of brings us back full circle to that fundamentals kind of thing, you know, re-emphasizing and really honing in on the fundamentals of effective journalistic technique, whether it's in the Q&A or the tenacity factor that you implied there with keep asking even though you get denied. So I'm going to use another example with the NHL. You know, they've added a new team. I love this name, the Krakens, in Seattle. Not that you would rush to go cover that on the other side of the country, but let's just talk about the NHL in general. You know, on the East Coast, you've got more than your fair share of hockey teams out there. But using it as an example to kind of dig, you know, because you can't physically be present to eyeball get questions answered. It's more difficult to deny a request when you're standing face to face with somebody than to deny the email. So where is hockey going to be in your coverage scheme of things, especially when you've got a sport that's going to end a season and start a season within days or weeks of one another at the end of 2020?
Right. Well, let me address that question, bring it back to MLS soccer for so Charlotte had an MLS team, you know, expansion team that got announced officially in January, I believe. Or was it December at this point? Yeah, time doesn't matter anymore. But they finally announced their team name on Tuesday, Charlotte FC. So after, you know, all this time, they get team name Charlotte FC. And we were trying for weeks to get ahead on what that team name was. And we had a pretty good idea using, you know, U.S. trademark registration, and, you know, David Tepper, who's the Panthers owner and Charlotte FC owner, ones that he had registered. And then you go from that to what domains are active, who have been purchased, and are they purchased by the same person. Then we got a list of all the ones that had the exact same domain registrar. We knew it probably had to be one of these three. Kept pressing it. We wouldn't get them to go on the record with us or even leak it to us. I'm comfortable saying this now, because if you read Alex's story that breaking the news, it was clear that an hour before their announcement went up, before Charlotte FC made their announcement that was going to be the team name, we got the team president on the phone to, you know, tell us the team name, give us details why, basically give us a lot of exclusive interview one-on-one, but we made an embargo agreement that we wouldn't launch that story until they made the announcement, that team. And those things happen simultaneously.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we're watching their live stream, and as soon as they say Charlotte FC, we hit publish, and we hit publish, and it's more than. And this story's developing. Come back later. It was, hey, welcome Charlotte FC. This is the new team name. It was a story that went out there first. She was first as far as media concerned. It was a full story that had unique, exclusive information. Google started indexing it first before everyone else because it was something meatier, and it was just, and it was first. So that was a situation we came to an embargo agreement with them, and those are things that happen time to time. And whether it's sports, I'm a big video game fan, covering all video games journalism. Embargoes like that happen a lot. Even food and drink, restaurant openings. You want to break things, but there are some things like this where if we broke it 30 minutes before their announcement, no one tomorrow would remember that we broke it. And everyone's going to have that story. It's not an exclusive investigation where, yes, we're so proud that we broke that story before. This team tried to cover up this abuse allegation that we did a great job bringing it. It wasn't one of those. Like, we'll launch it in conjunction. That's just made me think. I think talk about the Seattle Kraken. A similar situation we just had here. And that was building relationships and trust, and with the PR folks and the team president, and also pestering them enough. Like, fine, it's.
As we get close to the end of the show today, Matt, I want to end it with some thoughts from you about what the next few weeks are going to look like as we get into the official start, or supposedly the calendar official start of schools, be it high schools or colleges, happening, and because those could be some stories there that you can break with no embargo. It is what it is, and what the decision making is going to happen for kids. But I want to make sure that I bridge that for next week's show. For me, we're going to have guests that you're familiar with. Joe Parker from CSU is going to be on. We're going to have Rhonda Blanford Green along with him to talk about what.
Two people who just absolutely love me.
Oh, exactly. Your sarcasm is not lost on me, my friend. And in addition to that, here's another one. Hal Roth, the CFO of the Rockies, is going to be appointing an operations person to talk about facilities, basically physical plants, and how they're going to act. But colleges, Joe Parker, high schools, the high schools right at this point are waiting for the governor and the officials at the state level to make a decision about what they use as guidelines for schools. So that's coming. That's next week's show. So for us to end today's show, what do you want to make sure people understand about the pandemic sports journalist world these days, and how they can appreciate how, if they read a great sports story, what it took to bring that to them?
First, I want to say that in my comment in jest that I think Rhonda and Joe are great people overall, but I know I can get under their skin.
As you should. As you should as a good sports journalist.
I think they have good parts. But what I want people to know is just how hard. I was trying to say how to say this correctly, but how much work everyone puts in, whether it's sports journalists, everyone puts in to find great stories and tell those stories, and especially now when we're so handcuffed by the pandemic, and that's not unique to us. Everyone's handcuffed right now, and we're all trying to stay safe and keep others safe. But it limits our abilities to do our jobs the same way we are. Think about our ways we've had to adapt to tell these stories. I think that's what I want people to know. We are out there working hard, and that's really all we ever want people to appreciate about us, is that we're working hard and generally working for you to find information that you want to know. And whether it's during a pandemic, whether it's during a time of peace, whether it's during social unrest, journalists are find information and share that information and give context to that information. We're trying to help keep you informed of your day-to-day lives, and some of that has to do with sports. That's where my expertise is. Some of it has to do with health and safety, and a lot of sports reporters too are trying to merge that gap between sports and news. They're working hard on so many sports reporters have shown their ability to be great news reporters in the past few months. I live here locally in Raleigh. Some of our sports reporters have the highest subscription numbers and highest just pure traffic numbers over the past 7 months, covering news because of their experience, covering breaking news because of their experience in sports. Sports is always, breaking news is happening constantly. Everything's happening on the play. You have to be able to do what our sports reporters have done such a great job as breaking news reporters because this is what they're used to. So that's not a really great, it's a rambling answer, but that's what I just want to share is that you might not always agree with what we're writing. You might upset you to hear some information, but I mean, no one's out to get you. We're not out to get you. We're out to share information. And
Matt, it's always been my experience with you that you're a truthful, honest reporter that uses the facts to back up their byline. And a metaphor recently happened to kind of wrap around what you just said when Dr. Fauci took the mound at the Washington Nationals park and he threw the pitch in to open the game up. And you can imagine the phrases that happened after that video was aired with flattening the curve and 6 feet social distancing from the plate. He was only trying to protect the catcher. Those are issues about, one could take offense to those remarks, or one could wrap them into the context of the actual event itself, especially with the news that Dr. Fauci routinely creates for us as it relates to the pandemic. But with a smile on our face on his performance on the mound with that opening pitch for the Washington Nationals game against the Yankees, which, by the way, regretfully, they lost to Dr. Fauci's disgust, I'm imagining, because he's a lifelong Nationals fan. But Matt, you're right on target. Rambling or not, my friend, I appreciate your contribution to today's show and look forward to hearing and reading many great things from you in the future. My best to you and your family in the new house. If it was possible, I'd be there christening it with your favorite beverage, but that's not going to happen. So enjoy it and wrap your arms around every little thing you discover in that new house that's now all yours. So thanks to everybody for watching every Friday at 11 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. 360 Performance is here for you, bringing you performance information about the ways that will make you better. Thanks, Matt Stevens. Have a great day today.
Thanks, you too.
All right, bud, we're off the air. Nice. Thanks a lot.